You ever notice how sometimes a tiny mistake can actually make you like someone or something even more? It's weird, right? We're all chasing perfection, but it turns out a little flaw might just be the secret sauce that makes something truly appealing. Let's get into why that is. So here's the plan. First, we'll unpack this idea of the perfection paradox. Then we're going to jump in a time machine back to a really clever experiment involving a spilled coffee. That'll lead us right to something called the pratfall effect, and we'll see how car designers use this idea to make cars we fall in love with. And finally, we'll see what all this means for us.
All right, first up, the perfection paradox. It's this totally counterintuitive notion that being absolutely flawless, well, it isn't always the best way to get people on your side. Which really brings us to the big question here. Why is that? Why are we sometimes drawn to things that have these little quirks, these imperfections, while something that's technically perfect can just feel sterile? It just doesn't connect with us on an emotional level.
You know, cars are a perfect way to see this in action. Take the Lexus LS 400. From an engineering standpoint, a masterpiece. It was quiet, it was reliable, every single part was flawless. People admired it, for sure. But did they love it? Not really. Then you have the Jaguar E-Type. That hood is ridiculously long, it's not practical at all, but that flaw, that's what made it an absolute legend. It gave it personality.
So this isn't just a hunch designers have. There's real science behind it. And to get to the bottom of it, we have to go all the way back to the 1960s, to a very simple but kind of brilliant experiment that hinged on one clumsy moment. So there's this social psychologist, Elliot Aronson, and he's super curious about this exact thing. He wants to know, what does a simple mistake, a little blunder, actually do to how we see someone? So naturally, he designed an experiment to figure it out. The setup was really pretty ingenious. People would come in and listen to a recording of a student who was supposedly trying out for a quiz show. Now, this student was described as either superior or just average. And here's the twist. On some of the tapes, the student makes this embarrassing mistake. You hear a clatter and then saying, "Oh no, I've spilled coffee all over my new suit." After listening, all the participants had to do was rate how much they liked the student. Simple as that. And Aronson made sure the difference between the candidates was night and day. The superior one, he was a rock star, aced 92% of the questions, honor student, yearbook editor, the whole shebang. The average candidate, well, he was just okay. Got about 30% of the questions right, had a much more modest background. So the stage was set. How was a coffee stain going to change how people felt about these two guys?
And what they found in the data? Well, this was the big aha moment. It wasn't just interesting, it literally gave a name to this whole phenomenon.
Okay, just look at these numbers. The superstar student who didn't spill coffee, he got a solid likability score of about 21. But the superstar who did spill coffee, his score jumped all the way to 30. Now look at the average guy. Without the mistake, he gets a decent score, almost 18. But when he spills coffee, his score totally tanks, dropping all the way into the negatives. I mean, when you see it as a bar chart, it's just so dramatic. For the highly competent person, that little blunder made them way more likable. It made them human. But for the average person, the same mistake just kind of confirmed that they were mediocre. And that right there is what he called the pratfall effect. It's this idea that when someone we already see as competent messes up a little, we don't think less of them. No, we actually like them more. That mistake makes them relatable. It breaks down the wall that perfection can build up.
So what in the world does a 60s psychology experiment have to do with the car you drive? Well, this is where theory gets really interesting, because designers took this exact principle and started baking it right into their products. They started designing strategic flaws. The thinking is exactly the same as in the lab. A car that's engineered to absolute perfection can feel cold and robotic, kind of like that brilliant student who never makes a mistake. So what do designers do? They introduce a pratfall, a strategic imperfection, to give an otherwise superior design a little bit of humanity, something for us to connect with.
And once you know to look for it, you see these strategic flaws everywhere. It's not just the E-Type's hood. Think about the original VW Beetle. That quirky, rounded shape was totally impractical, but it gave the car its soul. Or think about the huge, controversial grilles on new BMWs. People either love them or hate them, but no one forgets them. It's even a whole design philosophy for Mazda, this idea of beautiful tension, where they actively avoid making lines perfectly harmonious.
I mean, listen to this quote from BMW's head of design, Adrian van Hooydonk. He says a great design should be polarizing. If everybody likes it right away, it's boring, it's forgettable. They're taking a calculated risk to create something that people have a real emotional reaction to.
But let's be super clear about something. This is not an excuse for bad quality or sloppy work. The pratfall effect only works its magic when the thing is already excellent to begin with. A little quirk on a masterpiece adds character. A flaw on a piece of junk is just a flaw. Okay, so let's zoom out because this whole idea, the power of imperfection, it goes way beyond car design or psychology labs. It has huge implications for all of us in pretty much every part of our lives. I mean, we live in this culture that's just obsessed with projecting flawlessness, right? Especially with social media. But the pratfall effect is this fantastic reminder that what people really connect with isn't perfection, it's authenticity. Being real beats being perfect almost every time. You see it everywhere. A leader who admits they made a mistake, they don't seem weak. They seem trustworthy, more human. A product that has some visible sign it was made by a person feels more special than something that's perfectly mass-produced. And in our own lives, right? Being a little vulnerable, letting people see our flaws, that's what builds real connection. Imperfection is what lets people in. The legendary designer Giorgetto Giugiaro just nailed it with this quote. Perfect proportion creates admiration. Perfect proportion with one unexpected element creates love. So in the end, yeah, perfection is admirable. We can respect it, but imperfection, that's what's lovable. That's what wins our hearts. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. What in your life is perfectly imperfect? What's something you love not in spite of its flaws, but because of them?